Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our weekly, we say weekly because every Tuesday and Thursday here at Wellness Biosciences RX, we have a business development Zoom call. And at different times, we have different topics and different subjects. And today's subject will be with respect to the CIMR technology that Wellness Biosciences has brought forth as one of our products. We want you to have a clear understanding of what that technology is and how it works. And this afternoon, we have a special treat. We have one of our brand partners that's going to be bringing you this information. Dr. Nesic he's a trained physician and trained surgeon. And today, Dr. Nesic is going to share with you the specific information about CIMR, and it's really exciting for us to have one of our medical doctors, one of our physicians that has intrinsic knowledge about the CIMR technology and can share with you about the advances and the benefits that are associated with that. So for Sean and myself, it's always a pleasure to have some good, credible folks that are sharing this information. And Dr. Nesic has been so kind to dedicate some time for us this afternoon. So with that, Dr. Nesic, I'll turn the show over to you. Thank you so much for your time and attention today, and look forward to hearing the information.
Barry, Sean, and everybody, thank you so very much. Hello, can everybody hear me? All right, excellent. A little bit about myself. I know Sean and Barry know who I am and what I've been. So I am a foreign trained general surgeon. I finished in Europe, my medical school, general surgical residency. I worked after my medical school for 3 years, almost 4. I worked with Doctors Without Borders. I was trained, as Barry said, in general surgery, and I was one of the first foreign trained field trauma surgeons because I worked in former Yugoslavia, Serbia, where there was a civil war going on during my residency program. So one of the things that I am aware of, even though it's not my primary specialty, is infection. Any war wound is an open wound, usually traumatic in nature, and very prone to getting infected. So we have to be very, very careful and use the best antibiotics and means of dressings to mitigate the problem and get the patient back to as healthy as possible, as quickly as possible. So with that, I came back to the States and I provide surgical services. And last year I joined Wellness Biosciences due to my big interest with CBD and the wellness that CBD products present to people without having to go into the big pharma type of supplying. Plus, it's very non-addictive and it's very mitigating to the body, where we have an endocannabinoid system that is already in place and waiting to receive the cannabinoids that are released by the CBD when you take it. Very interested in that sense, but today we're going to go and talk about the CIMR system. So I have a little prop for you today, and the first prop is when COVID-19 hit, we as professionals were told to start wearing these. And this is an original, actual N95 mask. It has the seal everywhere. It's tested on you, it's put on, and I don't know how you guys hear me, but I know that it's very hard to breathe in this because an N95 mask is supposed to have small openings that are only 0.3 microns in diameter. And so being 0.3 microns, it doesn't really let you breathe. And we had to have these during surgeries, which could last hours. And it's very, very tight and very uncomfortable. So last year, I was able to learn about the CIMR system and started researching it and got a little deeper into it than maybe some other people. So I'm very honored that Barry and Sean are letting me go into the CIMR technology today. What we are going to do is go a little bit through the technology. I'm going to maybe digress a little bit from what's on the screen, but most of it should be very self-evident as to what's going on. And I know most of you already have read the slides and are a little bit aware of its basic premise. CIMR is a layered air defense system. And one of the first things everybody needs to know is, what does the acronym CIMR stands for? And it is Continuous Infectious Microbial Reduction. Continuous Infectious Microbial Reduction. That's what CIMR stands for. Technically, the infectious microbials, whether they're pathogens or not, are reduced with the technology that is within the system. This is the big portable unit by CIMR. It's called the 414, and it can handle up to 16,000 square feet of space. This second unit is called the 2000, and it can handle 500 to 3,000 square feet of space. Now, when I say what it can handle, it depends on the load of the space. Just like when you go into an empty gymnasium, the load is much less for an air conditioner in that gymnasium to cool it than it is if it's filled with a couple of thousand people watching a basketball game. So please be aware that these systems work technically the same way. If it's an empty space without anybody in it, it'll take care of the maximum amount of square feet without a problem. But once people mitigate into an area, then you might need either the people to be in a smaller area with the unit right there, or you might need more units. So there's a mathematical equation and formula depending upon the load of the space and how many units are needed for that space at the time of maximum load. The introduction to this, it's an emerging technology to combat the SARS-CoV-2 in the air and on surfaces. It has been studied by prestigious universities, the United States government itself, the Secretary of Defense, the Pentagon, and is endorsed the use of dry hydrogen peroxide, which is a form of water and one extra oxygen molecule as a preventative and protective measure against COVID-19. We'll get into that a little bit more later. It's a deadly weapon against this and other viruses and pathogens. In understanding this, the contagions that are prevalent, not just by COVID-19, but others, protocols, information, they have taken a toll on our conscience and on our lifestyle. As we know today, there are prohibits, or they're not laws, but there are enactments where how many people are allowed in a restaurant, in a movie theater, in a public setting. And so therefore, all of these adjuncts to our private life and our ability to move and go about like we did before COVID-19 last year, it inhibits our life and our way of life. So this fear of the unknown, it paralyzes us, but it brings out our innovativeness and our best to create something to bring our life back together to normality as we know it and want it to. Again, CIMR is in the technology which will combat the coronavirus in the air and on surfaces. It is a complete solution to the problem, and it comes in a form of dry hydrogen peroxide, which works 24/7. It works in your internal environmental space, and it kills the bacteria, the viruses in the air and on surfaces, including your clothing, hair, and skin. And the way we know that is you can go outside, you can do your daily stuff, and you come home into your internal environment. You can bring that pathogen in with you without knowing it. It might not infect you, but it actually might be on you. Everything and everyone is protected with the CIMR technology. You can breathe safely in your indoor space because of it. And the proprietary technology creates low-level hydrogen peroxide gas, 0.02%, to protect your workspace, your home, or any of the air or environment around you. It will get rid of viruses like the COVID-19 SARS, bacteria, mold, and other pathogens before they have a chance to actually invade you, take over, and affect your health of yourself, your family, your clients, coworkers, if you have this in the environment, in your work environment. So how does it work? Well, viruses or pathogens seek water in order to survive, to exchange waste, and to replicate. The dry hydrogen peroxide molecule that is created by the CIMR is attracted to the virus host. And with this attraction, it bonds to it because the virus thinks of the hydrogen peroxide as a water molecule. The fact that it has an extra oxygen is beneficial for its ability to then actually destroy that virus particle. So with the extra oxygen atom, when the pathogen takes it in, and it's going to take multiples of it because it wants to create a water bubble, that oxygen reacts and it releases energy, technically blowing up the pathogen cell wall and killing it. And we can think of that in a very simple way, almost like a torpedo in water, which then when it hits the outer hull of a ship, blows a hole in it, and the outer environment comes in and sinks the ship. So this is a very similar type of situation that occurs, except that it's in a form of the virus in a dry air oxygen molecule. And here's a nice little drawing of what looks like a virus, whether it's SARS or something else. And then the cell wall has been exploded, and the outer atmosphere now is being able to be taken in, and therefore it eliminates the cell completely. Another question is, how does it seek and destroy the viruses, the bacteria, mold, mildew, and fungi? Well, the core process of the technology with CIMR is a photocatalytic process where gaseous hydrogen peroxide is produced within the box itself. Since hydrogen peroxide particles have both positive and negative charges, an electrostatic attraction occurs, and they are attracted to the pathogens and other molecules, making the hydrogen peroxide molecule function like a scavenger in your internal environment. It homes in when it is attracted by this electrostatic attraction of the pathogens, homes in like the torpedo I said before, comes in, releases that extra oxygen molecule, destroys the cell. And one of the things that I know hasn't been mentioned as much, but you also want to think about it as how neutral that action really is. We are not creating and we are not um, destroying anything within our air except the pathogens. This takes the water that is in the atmosphere, it takes the oxygen that is in the atmosphere, covalently bonds it together. Once the oxygen molecule is released to kill the cell, it goes back to being water. So technically, while the word isn't carbon neutral, you can think of this as a very neutral activity with no disruptive change to your environment and no harmful gases or chemicals in that environment after the action is done. Hydrogen peroxide is known as a very effective disinfectant. It's used in many industries, such as hospitals, restaurants, anything that needs a major cleaning, you can use hydrogen peroxide for that. You can find hydrogen peroxide in lower concentrations in your pharmacy, and you know it's put in brown bottles. And the reason it's done that is it also photosensitive. If you leave it in a glass bottle, it will actually eventually turn back into water, just releasing the oxygen molecule. So that's the reason they keep it actually in the brown bottles. The technology will kill the bacteria and the viruses, as we said, by oxidizing the outer membrane and keeping your home and workplace safe. This is an interesting slide. It shows us the different ways we try to actually protect ourselves from the environment and the pathogens. And it is an upside down triangle, wherein the least effective is on the bottom and the most effective ways of removing hazards is on the top row, or the base of the triangle is actually on top. And as we can see, the least effective methods are PPEs, and this was one of the PPEs that we used. And even though it's an N95 mask, it still is porous, and viruses could go through these microscopic holes. The administrative controls, which are, we changed the way people work. What happened? People don't go to their offices anymore. People stay at home. Even my wife now works from home and has been for almost a year. March 13th, I believe, will be exactly one fiscal year that she is working from home and not going to her office to work with her coworkers, collaborate and do things. Now things are done on Zoom like this, or I don't know, Google Meets or other versions of these things. What else can we do to be effective against these viruses? Well, we isolate people from hazards. And how do we do that? Well, again, isolation is really not an effective long-term issue for humans. Humans need other humans not only to collaborate with, but to have rapport and have an interaction. Sean says he's a hugger, and I believe him, and I like to be a hugger too. But what did we have to do during this past year? Well, we had to learn to touch elbows, or to maybe fist pump, or to just wave to even your best friend who you would love to hug and kiss. And what about our parents? My parents are in their 80s. You know how many times I've had to be worried after traveling or doing some kind of event, medical, or with my son when he goes to lacrosse and we come back. Those first 10 days, I have to be very careful with my 80-year-old parents. And so I have to stay my distance and make sure not to hug them or kiss them or anything else. So yeah, we isolate to prevent the hazard. Is that a way of life? I'm not quite sure it is. Then we substitute by replacing the hazard. And the most effective is elimination, of course. And the elimination is the elimination of these pathogens. And how do we eliminate the pathogens? Well, the technology that is in the CIMR units is what eliminates the pathogens. It takes in nothing more than the ambient air in your indoor environment, transforms it into the hydrogen peroxide gas, which is a scavenger. It goes around in the areas you have the units in, and it will destroy these pathogens, including allergens. And I can state for the allergens because my son has allergies. And when he comes home after lacrosse or after going on a tournament, in less than 36 hours, he's back to normal. One night of sleep, next day he's already better. The day after that, not a problem. Next question is, what are the benefits of this technology? Well, the CIMR technology offers cost avoidance, low cost maintenance. They do not require refills. They do not require replacing filters. They work 24/7. You do not need to hire anybody to disinfect the facility, or if facilities do use other technologies, just like an airplane that needs to be cleaned before it can have more passengers and take off, the room or the environment has to be closed off in order for the mitigating substance to work, whether it's ultraviolet, whether it's a mist, it could even be a hazardous chemical. Now you have to aerate the place, you have to open it back up to the external environment. And then what happens? Well, the pathogens, believe it or not, come back in. And when they come back in, you put a person back into the environment, the pathogen is back. Here with CIMR, 24/7, there is no pathogen in your environment. And it has been shown to now be 99.9% effective against these pathogens. It works around the clock, as I said, producing the hydrogen peroxide gas in every square millimeter of your space. Anywhere oxygen or ambient air, let's not call it oxygen, but the air can go through, whether it's even through a drywall or a crack or a gap in your foundation, this goes through it. Everywhere the oxygen goes or the ambient air goes, so does this. The productivity, it's constantly fighting and terminating pathogens 24/7 because of its proprietary technology. Employees and animals are protected in that space, reducing possibilities of any bacteria or virus affecting them. Also, it's very good against any cross-contamination. How do we break the chain of infection? The CIMR technology is used to break the chain of infection and stops the spread of pathogens in order to protect the people. And we see this with this circle. And in it are the different pathogen source, the spreading source, how it's passed, how it's received. And CIMR works to stop all of those issues. So in the infectious microbes, it stops the bacteria, fungi, virus, and mold by destroying it. The pathogen source, whether it's people, equipment, water, or food, since it could be on a surface, again, the dry hydrogen peroxide works on surfaces. If you cough, sneeze, and everybody breathes, you could potentially spread the virus. This stops it because it's in the environment that the technology is in and therefore kills it. It can be passed through shared air or surfaces. Surfaces depends only a short period of time. But again, with the dry hydrogen peroxide being a scavenger, it kills even anything on a surface. How do we receive the viruses or the pathogens? Primarily through our nasopharyngeal openings, which is the nose and the mouth, though it can be, if somebody accidentally sneezes directly into you and you don't have glasses on or something, it could possibly come in through your lacrimal gland or your eyes, but that's a very small percentage. And what's the highest risk of the people? Well, people who don't have the immunity, have immune deficiency, and the elderly. Babies, they're getting the immunoglobulins usually if they're breastfeeding or if they're small and they're still, that's a worrisome, but I don't have those types of, how shall I say, percentages that I know of where a lot of babies have been infected. And up to this point, it's not shown to be very big on babies. Do we have proof that it works? It's been in the field for years, including catastrophic events like Hurricane Rita, Katrina, Ike, Harvey, Irma, and Maria. It has been used in stabilization and remediation cleanup of buildings. Kansas State University, Sandia Labs found that hydrogen peroxide gas technology disinfected 99% of the H5N8 virus on surfaces within 2 hours. Now we have more up-to-date information, which if you come to our meeting on Saturday, I think that Alton Holt and Joseph Trahan will have even more up-to-date information and papers showing how quickly it actually works. There's a Kansas State University that also has found the efficacy of hydrogen peroxide gas. We know that MRSA, which is the methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, E. coli, Staph aureus, Listeria, Candida, black mold, Streptococcus, Pneumoniae, Bacillus, all of these studies demonstrated microbial reduction on contaminated surface from 96.4 to 99% within the first 24 hours of having CIMR units in that area and atmosphere. Again, I think that there's newer information regarding that from these, and I believe Alton Holt and I said Joseph Trahan will have that on Saturday. Different case studies. The generators have been put to test time and time again. There are articles from the US Air Force, Kansas State, World Health Organization, University of Pittsburgh. And if you need any information on that, I believe you just contact WBRx and you can get any of those papers and information and read more about that. So one of the questions has been, is it dangerous in our atmosphere, in our environment, by being produced 24/7? And is it harmful to anything? Well, this chart shows you that there are 4 elements that have been looked at: water, hydrogen peroxide with CIMR, ozone, which is O3, and ultraviolet light. Then the question is it dangerous to humans or pets? Water, no. Dry hydrogen peroxide is safe below 0.05 parts per million. And we know already that CIMR produces 0.02 parts per million on a constant basis. So it does not go over the 0.05. Ozone, we know, is extremely dangerous in high quantities or when it's created in a fast way, and it's dangerous to lungs, but it is used for sanitizing. But you can smell the ozone in the air, where with the dry hydrogen peroxide, you can smell like a cleanliness, but not that staticky ozone smell. And then we have the ultraviolet, which is extremely dangerous if you look upon it directly. So for vision, and again, the ultraviolet light only works once it's on. Once it's off, once again, like anything else, it stops working. So the pathogens can come back at any time after that. I think if you're interested, you can read the notes and look at the other warnings. But what we found is that dry hydrogen peroxide in the amount that is produced by the CIMR units are safe for humans, for plants, for animals, in your environment, and it works 24/7. So it's really fit all of the criteria necessary for a technology that in a way you can't see, hear, or smell or taste, but it's there and it works. We can compare CIMR to other pathogen eradication technologies, and it's referred to as a low-level hydrogen peroxide in dry air gas form, or known as H2O2 free-floating air molecules. The pathogens, again, as I said earlier, negatively charged attract the hydrogen peroxide. It releases that oxygen molecule because the pathogens think it's water. The extra covalently bonded oxygen molecule is released, and like a torpedo, it just goes in and blows up the cell wall. Therefore, releasing the internal substance of the virus, or the outside atmosphere comes in and just blows up the rest of the pathogen. CIMR technology in action, and this is very fascinating. This looks like a rendering of the 414 model, where on the right in orange you see the oxygen and moisture molecules that are in the air being sucked into the machine. They go through the honeycomb lattice work, which is the technology that is in there. And on the other side, you get the 0.02 parts per million of the hydrogen peroxide released from the unit. And it's constantly working. So it constantly produces 0.02 parts per million, works 24/7, purifies the air, surfaces on any home, office, business. You can even, if you could plug it into a car, there are smaller units, it could probably do it in your car also. That way you could drive around without a mask on your face while you're inside your own vehicle. I've seen people do that. I don't understand why, but they do. Who has CIMR? Up until now, it's basically been the Department of Defense, with Alton Holt has been working with them for 20 years. So we see that it's the Army, Air Force, DOD, the Navy, NASA has it, and Joseph Strahan mentioned that it's not in the exact same form as what we have here, because they have to also, there's elimination of gases that we humans produce. And since it's in a tight, closed environment in the Skylab, they have to have other technologies to get rid of other impurities with it. But it is in the Skylab and used by NASA. It's made in the USA. It's also used by Houston Baptist University, Lamar University. I believe that the Children's Law Center uses it here in Harris County. And there is actually an office building in Houston. I think there's a slide coming up where they actually have the technology used in the whole building. Some of the studies that show the efficacy of CIMR is on this slide right here. We know that hospital infections are down when this is used. Cross-contamination. U.S. Army testimonials in Fort Hood, which studied mold in the barracks, if I remember that I read that one. So there's a lot of different studies that each of you can take a look at. Again, you can contact Sean, Barry, or Austin, and I'm sure that they will be able to forward you any of those studies. Endorsements and testimonials. Well, there's nothing better than the retired General P.K. Carlton, who has been studying this technology now for quite a while. And he himself says that the CIMR technology is proven as the single most effective protection method against viruses, including COVID-19. And one of the things I have to tell you, who's on the line right now, Saturday, we will be blessed with the 17th U.S. Air Force Surgeon General P.K. Carlton. He will be here in Houston at the Zaza Hotel as one of the guests and speakers. To hear from him will be an incredible, event in my life, because he will be able to explain really how this technology works for the people that were under him, under his direction, and people he was in charge of. Sean, who used to be in the Army, will understand what superiors and what their obligations are to the men that are under them. And there's no better person than retired General P.K. Carlton to explain that. And I'm looking forward to it on Saturday. Here's another slide with different years that the CIMR has been installed. And I can go back here and I see 205, 206, 207. So we've got different barracks: Pine Forest Baptist Church, First Methodist Church in Beaumont, Lamar Library Museum Law Center, operating rooms, Geisinger Hospital operating rooms in Pennsylvania, 2016, Homeland Security Valley Campus for Valley Baptist Retreat Center, 2006, Fort Polk Barracks in 2010, Redstone Test Center, U.S. Army, they won't release that, Langley Air Force Base, and Maxwell Air Force Base, I guess in 2019 and 2020. So recently, we are putting CIMR technology in the Department of Defense centers around the US. Here's some references. I don't think I need to go into those. And I talked about it earlier. Here is actually the first building in Houston that has CIMR technology in every floor and covers every square inch of floor space and airspace. This is the 5858 building over on Westheimer. And it has adapted the CIMR technology from the moment you enter, and has given a new mode of operation for all the tenants that are in there to, of course, if they want to have and continue with the protocols of wearing masks and doing what the CDC and the World Health Organization suggest, that's totally up to each of the tenants and who have rent in that space. But the minute you walk into that space, you will be COVID virus pathogen free, and you can walk around as you did in 2018 without a mask, without worrying about cross-contamination. This is the CIMR 2000. It's a wonderful box. It's about, as you can say, 12 inches high with almost 12 inches deep. So that's a 12 by 12 by 12. It has 2 CIMR cells inside and a 4-speed fan. So I have one of these in my house, and it really has done an incredible job of keeping our house safe. every one of our friends who comes here, nobody wears a mask anymore. We feel safe to tell them we have that technology. We feel safe ourselves, my parents, when they come here. So now my parents come over here instead of us going to their house, so that we can feel as if we did before the issuance of the COVID-19 guidelines by the government. It has a 3-year warranty, which means that for the 3 years after the purchase, everything is covered, in my understanding, for the technology. After that, it's just a replacement of the bulbs that are inside, and that's an easy change. So there's nothing really to worry about. And since it's not a filter, there's nothing for it to clog up or to have to replace on a monthly, weekly time frame. The industrial unit is called a 414. It has 2 fans, and it can go from 1,000 square feet to 16,000 square feet. And again, the most important thing why the range of coverage is not because it doesn't cover 16,000 square feet. It depends on the load of the amount of people in the space. So the more people that are in the space, then the scavengers of the dry hydrogen peroxide that's produced, now it's not that they work harder, but the machine continues to produce the same amount of dry hydrogen peroxide. And so the amount of space that it'll cover is less depending upon the quantity of people that come in. There are, and this one. The purchase options, I believe now we have a pre-launch. So the best people to talk to about that is Sean, Barry, and of course on Saturday you'll hear a lot more about that over at the Zaza Hotel. And I believe that that is the presentation of the CIMR technology. I thank you very much for your time, and I hope that I was informative and you learned something. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nesic. What a great job of giving us specific information and really in a condensed format. And this recording certainly will be rendered and sent to all of our brand partners for republication. Thank you so much for your time. For those of you that are on the Zoom call, hold on. We'll go through some logistics. Just want to close out the recording with that, thanking him and appreciating it so much.